Hey, what's up, guys? So, if you didn't see Dan's live stream back a few days ago now, he kind of leaked a lot of cards because he took and opened an entire booster box of prototype cards that he got as a test print. So, there's a lot in there that we can kind of take a look at. So, we're just going to kind of jump right into that and take a look at all these new cards we got that we haven't seen before. So, starting with the left, I know I'm blocking some of the description. This is an image that Krino and Discord put together. I don't know if they made it themselves or if they just grabbed it from somewhere, but it's a good little clarity thing. So Chrysor, I know you can't see because my box is in the way, but it's 7/4. Opponent does not have any Wind Spirit enchanted Elestrals. This Chrysor can attack your opponent's spirit deck directly. That's alright. I mean, the thing is, it's a 7/4, so it's not going to just fall over to the other 2-drops, and it attacks directly for 2. Which isn't a ton, to be honest. So, like, example, if I Exaltair, I hit you for 2 with his next ability. And then if I clear out the path with a removal spell, a rune of some kind, I then hit you for another 3 directly. I don't think Chrysor is going to see a ton of play as is like that. It's cool that it attacks directly. But especially in Wind, when there's no way to get this out early, it's got good stat, like it's got an okay attack stat, and it can kind of punch through, defensive boards. Maybe it's a sideboard card for like defense decks if defense decks become a thing with like Spinosect. But as is, I don't think it's going to see a ton of play. Especially like why I wouldn't want to make my Sorlet into Chrysor. I'd rather have my Sorlet in play like shield or something to protect the Sorlet, and just use my Sorlet to break my opponent's Elestrals every turn, and then attack directly with other stuff. It could be a really fun target, like if you're late game, to just Nexus a ton of things to and just hit directly with, but then it just gets shielded. Like, the best thing you do with this card is make it go real tall and hit directly, but then it gets shielded or boom batted or some other removal card, so I don't think it's going to see a ton of play. Then next we have Ivory. So it's a 6/10 for 2, which is, I think, the biggest defense stat we've seen on 2 so far. When it's destroyed in battle, you can expend water to special enchant Typhlant from your underworld. Typhlant is a 1 cost. Let's just skip ahead real quick. There he is. So Typhlant's a 3/2. When it's normal special casted, you discard 1 card from your opponent's hand at random. So Typhlant's a really good card. Ivory is a little weird. So you can get it on 2 pretty easily, and in defense, and you can ascend it off of Typhlant. It would see play in like a Golden Apple of Discord, like discard deck where you play Golden Apple, discard a Typhlant, maybe Tadpuff and an Ivory, so that way when the Ivory gets destroyed, they have to discard another card. 10 is a huge defense stat, so honestly, just playing this in defense mode just tells your opponent to just stop for the moment. So I think this card's not really good because of that destroyed in battle effect, but it's really good because of that 10 defense. That's just like, you sit it down and nothing's attacking over it for a turn unless they have like, even a Majesty turn 1 ramp gets to like 9 or 10 if you're like using Poseidon, so 10 is a lot of defense, like a lot of defense. So I think this will see play if you need a super heavy defense option on 2. Not necessarily because of its ability to get Typhlant back, but they kind of both sit in control setup. So like if Ivory's your control setup card, it's a nice control card to have to get Typhlants back out to force your opponent to keep discarding, and it makes your opponent have really bad like 2-for-1 trades with this card. So I think it's a really good control card. It really does slow some things down. I think it's a good card. It could be better without, like, I think if you drop its stats down and give it, no, actually, no, it's fine. 6/10, it's fine. I think it's fine. It's pretty interesting, as is. It's a great control card like that. The next card, we have Drops of Lethe, or Lethe. So both players discard their entire hands to the underworld, and each player draws the same number of cards they discarded. If you're a Magic player, this is a wheel effect. If you're a Yu-Gi-Oh player, it's a card destruction effect. If you play both those games, you know that this effect is insanely strong. banned and limited and all that jazz in multiple different ways over multiple formats in both games. And it's a one cost. It's too strong, it's gonna get changed 100%, or it's gonna be like the first card that gets banned in the game. Like a one cost, so this is basically just one cost. Let's say you're going turn one, you have a decent hand, and your opponent's going second. You could play, maybe you play like a Necruff and a shield down. And if he drops a left, they draw two. And then you play Nog, or let's say you play Nog, draw two, drops a left, they draw three, and just cycle through a bunch of cards. That's okay. But now, let's say you're playing a mill deck, and you do drops of Lethe into drops of Lethe into drops of Lethe. Your opponent just got rid of 15 cards. They don't have their starting hand anymore, so maybe they mulled once because they didn't like their opening hand. So now they have an opening hand that they can't mulligan, that they're just stuck with. That could be terrible. I think this card is way overpowered. I think it would cause a lot of just degenerate, overdrawing and milling of your opponent by drawing. Let's say your opponent's playing some of these cards, and now all of a sudden they can't play theirs because they already drew through 15, 20 cards because their opponent kept doing it, and they just lost all their cards. Their opponent just got to select everything they wanted out of their hand first, and then drop it, and then select cards out of the hand, drop it. Drops Lethe, Ambrosia, drops Lethe, Nog, Ambrosia, drops. It's just so much. It's way too much. Even at 3, this card would be really strong. I think it would be okay at 3. No, okay. It would still be if this is right now 10 out of 10 broken, if it was at 3, it'd be an 8 out of 10 broken. It's still really strong. So it's got to get changed. Maybe if it's a one-sided effect, it'd be alright. Or maybe it was just discard your hand, draw 3, or I don't know. As is, it needs to get changed, or it's just gonna get banned so fast, and we don't want to see cards banned because we want to play our cards. Speaking of interesting draw cards, though, our next thing is Charn's Obel. So this is a 1-cost counter rune. Until the end phase, you can draw 1 card for each underworld that is destroyed in battle on your field. This card is really good, and you might not see it because right now it looks like, oh, it's basically Jar of Greed. My thing died, I draw a card. It's better than that. It's not just a 1-cost draw 1, because let's say you have Foamy in play, and your opponent goes, I don't know, Blazarus, right? They take your Foamy. You trigger Charn's Obel. They go, okay, you draw a card. Now they have to decide, do I attack your Foamy again and let you draw another card? Because you just brought another Foamy out. And they go, yeah, I'll attack your Foamy again, draw another card. And now all of a sudden, you draw another card. And you just 1 for 2'd. Let's say you have a huge board of Hydrake of some description. You're playing the Hydrake Pantera deck. And you just go Charn's Obel, crash your Hydrake into Twindra, crash your Twindra into Pantera, do it with another Hydrake. Let's say you have 2 Hydrakes in play to start. Well, you're drawing 4 or 5 cards there because you're just crashing everything. And then all of a sudden you just drew 4 or 5 cards for 1, and you can Ambrosia your spirits back because you probably drew an Ambrosia if you're running Charn's Obel and Hydrakes and stuff. This card's really good, but it does require specific decks, and it requires a lot of setup to be really good. So I don't think it's overtly broken in any way, because if you activate it while you're in defense because your opponent's attacking you, your opponent can stop attacking and you don't draw all the cards. And then if you want to use it on your turn, you have to set it, wait for your opponent, and then come back to your turn and then do everything, which requires a lot of setup to get a lot of value. So I think it's a really good card that has a lot of value to it, but you do need to set it up, so I don't think it's broken. I think because of the setup requirements for it, and because your opponent has choice of what to do about it on their turn when you activate it, I think it's not crazy strong, but I think it's really good in specific decks, which makes it super playable. Kind of like how Pandora's Box is super strong, but only playable against certain decks. Charn's Obel is super strong, but only played in certain decks. You're probably not playing this in Earth, because you're not really destroying a lot of cards in Battle on Earth. You're just kind of tempoing. It's going to be really good in Wind with Hydreigs and stuff. It'll probably see some play in like Capital Army foamy stuff, but that's about it. I don't think it's going to see too much play in other Adexes. I think it's a really cool card. I think it's really fun. Next, this is a card that I spoke with Johnny and Moxie and stuff about when we saw it. Titanostalk is probably the strongest card in the game, revealed. Needs a nerf or change of some description because, as is, it is busted. Why? Why is a 2/5 for 1 so strong? As long as Titanostalk is enchanted, your opponent must play with their hands revealed at all times. What does that mean? That means if you go first, you play Titanostalk in defense, you know what your opponent's playing, you know what, counter runes they're setting, you know what answers they have, you know what they drew for their first turn, you know what's in their hand, you know what to play around. You get so much information. And if they don't have a answer to Titanostalk like Earthquake or Necruff plus a card or Sorlet, then you just get to see their next draw and potentially the next draw, and you can just fully play around everything that they have for the entire game as long as you keep Titanostalk alive. Which, if you're playing like the counter rune control deck that did really well in one of our community tournaments of just custom cards decks on Tabletop Simulator, you play this card in that deck and you know 100% at all times what your opponent has, what they put face down, and what they can do in the next turn or two to just counter and destroy and stop anything that they might play. And you put 3 Titanostalks in your deck, so if it gets destroyed, just play it again. It's at 2/5. This needs to be like a 1/1 with that effect. It needs to be able to get knocked out super quick, or even at 1/1. Like, if this was just like your opponent reveals their hand when you play it on cast, it'd be okay as a 2/5. You get information, but then you don't know what they set in what order. But because you see what their hand is, and they have to set their runes one at a time, you know what each rune on their board is when they set it. Just you know what they have, and if you want to target destroy something, you just target destroy it. Titanostalk, I don't want to keep talking about Titanostalk. It's really, really strong. It's good. It's honestly, it's probably the strongest card that we've seen revealed in the entire game. Even stronger than it drops. Like, this card needs to get a nerf. I'm sorry. It's a cool card. I love the theme of it. It's a giant, dinosaur that sees over your opponent's hand in a sense. I love it, but it's gotta be nerfed. 100%. There's just too much good about it. Alright. Next card. Super interesting. Necklace of Harmonia. The Empowered Celestial gains 5 attack. Holy crap, that's a lot. The controller of the Empowered Celestial must expend 2 spirits during their end phase. If they cannot, this card is destroyed. I really like this card. Why do I like this card? So, 5 attack is a lot of attack. You put this in anything, it's probably breaking over anything that your opponent has. Just know that when you play it, the first time you play it, it's kind of a 4 cost. Because if you enchant on your thing, you pay 2. Then at the end turn, you have to pay 2 again unless you crash something. What's interesting is Dan has said that you can enchant or empower artifacts to Elestrals your opponent controls. So you could put this on your opponent's Elestral and force them to like ascend out of it or something if you need them to they don't want to expend 2 every turn for it. Or if you crazy thought, if you have Crackhead, right? Your Necklace of Harmonia is something that they have that's really big, and then you put Crackhead on it. And if they have empty hand, they can't ascend out of it, they're stuck expending 2 every turn because they can't attack with it. That's like, both players are on empty and you're just trying to, like, it'd be hilarious if they're stuck expending every turn because they can't ascend out of their own Elestral. Or if you put it on something like, let's say you put on their Pantera, and they don't want to get rid of their Pantera, and you have the next card, if you peeked ahead at Altar of the Stars, and you have Tsunami, and you just keep putting their Pantera in defense position so they can't actually attack with it. and they have to expend every two for it. Like, I think Nexus Harmonia is going to be a really like awkwardly niche water win con where you just empower a bunch of your opponent's stuff that they don't want to get rid of and just keep putting it in defense position or preventing attacks like Gorgon's Gaze so that they can't touch you and they keep expending two every turn. Or it'll see play in like super attack aggro decks to just like push over stats. Um, I think it's a really fun card. It's not necessarily good, but because there's so many interesting things you can do with it, I think it's a great card. I think it really is going to stoke a lot of people's creativity with how they play with it. And there's definitely going to be someone who tries to play a burn deck that is all built around Necklace of Harmonia and keeping your opponent from doing anything with their Elestrals that Necklace is on. It'd be funny. I love the card. I'm going to try to build a deck around it. That's it. It's going to be funny. I don't think it's going to be good, but it's going to be fun. And then, as mentioned, Altar Stars. So you can Nexus a spirit on your field. If you do, target any Elestral on the field and change its position. That's changing its combat position, so attack to defense, not its location on the board. It's like a mini Tsunami with Nexus. Two cards that does insane work with is Carrion. So if you attack with Carrion, you steal something of theirs that's big, and then you Nexus their spirit off of it with this card, and just put a spirit somewhere else on the board. We need a ruling of whether or not you can Nexus your opponent's spirit when you control their Elestral to one of your cards. I would say probably you could. I mean, but you just Nexus something off of something you steal with Carrion, and bam, you just killed something on their board. Or attacked with something on their board, and then, got rid of it. I think Altar Star is really good in that case. The other really good case is in Idolo or whatever Idolo is called. Idolo is so much easier to remember. So Idolo is the 4/2 Earth that has one attack for every other of itself on the board, including itself. So it's a 5/2. When it destroys something in combat, it special casts itself from your deck or hand in defense. Altar Stars will let you then put the one you just specialed into attack position right away to attack and maybe destroy something else to get another one out. So I think Altar Stars is a really good combo piece with Carrion and Resurrect. And honestly, it's not bad with, Bertakwa. It can stop an attack from hitting you in the first place. Almost like a mini Gorgons for just attacking. I think Altar Star is really good. It has a little bit of setup. You need to have some Celestial Spirits in play to move stuff around to actually activate the ability. But I think it's a really good card. I think it's really strong. It has a lot of potential combo play. It's good. And then next on this row, and there's a lot of cards to go over, but it's a lot of really cool cards. Scavengem is a 4/6 for 2 Earth. When it's normal and casted, it says enchanted, but we all know it's cast now. You can search your deck for 2 cards, any 2 cards, and add them to your hand. So although 4/6 for a 2 cost is absolute dumpster fire stats, the ability to look for any 2 cards in your deck, put them in your hand, is really strong. I think Scavengem will see a lot of play because A, the ability is insanely strong. You're tutoring 2 cards, searching 2 cards, any 2 cards that restriction can do a lot of work. And B, Foley Force is played a lot in the Earth deck right now because Earth is kind of just a stompy tempo deck right now with lots of big stats and decent abilities. In the custom deck space, I'm not talking about the prototype decks. And with Foley Force out, this is a 6/8, so it lives in defense most likely. And you search 2 cards. That's really good. I mean, if you're playing against a deck with a lot of runes, you go search out a Pegas and Thunderstorm, maybe. If you're playing, or Equalings, you're playing against something you need to remove, go search out your Earthquakes. Go search out 2 Earthquakes and go pop, pop. Go search out some counter runes you might need. The card, we all know that Olaf was really strong because the toolbox. This card's really strong because the toolbox is at the restriction of its, you have to ascend into it, and Earth doesn't really special ascend much. But it's a really good card. It does a lot. It's just, any 2 card combo you want, go get it. Any 2 answers you want, go get them. Maybe you want to go grab a Centarbor because you know your Scavengem's going to live because they have an empty board, and you grab a Gorgons or something with it. There's a lot of options. It's a really good card. I don't think it's broken because its stat line's a little low, but it is very strong. Typhlant, we went over briefly. It's 3/2. When you cast it, you can discard a random card from your opponent's hand. That's pretty strong in a control deck. I wouldn't be surprised if you see a like thunder, water, like hand disruption deck with Typhlant and uh, Ivory, Golden Apple, Sparkit, etc. Um, Discarding card at random, pretty good. The next best thing would be you choosing what to discard, and the next worst thing would be your opponent choosing what to discard. At random means your opponent might just discard at random a card they really need. If they chose, they would choose the worst card that they have in their hand, and if you choose, you would choose the best card. So I think the fact that it's on normal and special, and you can get out with like foamy and stuff, it's gonna see play in some kind of discard deck. Other than a discard deck, I don't think it'll see play. Cracking. So Dan showed us another version of cracking that clears up a little bit of one of its rulings. But to start, it's a 6/5 for 2. And when it's normal cast, you can target up to 2 unoccupied Elestral zones. Your opponent. Oh, it does say unoccupied in the card. I thought it didn't then, because people are asking like, oh, what if I have all my zones filled with Elestrals and someone plays cracking? Do I destroy stuff? No. Because you have to choose 2 unoccupied Elestral zones on your opponent's field. As long as it's enchanted, they cannot use those zones. So again, you have 4 zones you can play Elestrals in. This stops 2 of them from being used. So if you get like a cracking out on turn 1, they're restricted to 2 zones. So let's say they play Ignectar, they can only special 1 Ignectar out. If you somehow get 2 cracking out while they have an open board state, then they can't play any Elestrals until they get rid of cracking, which I think is hilarious. 6/5 stat, not the greatest. It will die to a lot of things. If you play Atlantis, it'll be 7, or it'll be an 8 attack, which lives a bit more. So I think you might play this in like a water control deck, or probably not in your main deck. It's probably a sideboard card against the people that might be playing like Urz decks or Ignectars or this Idol, like the go wide cards. I don't think this is going to see a ton of play in the main deck because it doesn't do enough in the main deck, but in the sideboard situation, if there's a lot of swarm decks, this will stop swarm decks pretty hard for a turn, I think, because it'll only allow them to play 2 Elestrals, then you destroy 1, and yada yada yada. I think Kraken's a great card. It's super fun. Sideboard potential, not super main decky. You can Magical Christmas land like, I don't know, maybe you have like Shield of Achilles, 2 Tadpuffs and Crackings in your hand, and you play like Tadpuff into Cracking turn 1, and then turn 2 you bounce whatever they attacked with because they did something, and then you do Tadpuff into Cracking again, and now they can't play anything. Like, it's slow, it doesn't do a ton, but yeah. And the rest of the leaks from that video that Dan, well, not video, but the live stream Dan did, there's Full Art Imperial. It's looking beautiful. Amphirix in its stellar form is beautiful. If you haven't seen Amphirix, I don't know if I talked about it. It's 3/3. Your opponent end phase, you can expend 1 to special enchant from your underworld to your field. It's pretty good. I like the card. I think it's very strong, but it is costly, so it's kind of like the fire version of Tadpuff, if you want an example, and you just do all the Tadpuff stuff with Amphirix instead. And then an alternate version of Circle of Sky artwork, which looks interesting. I don't know if that artwork's going to be the artwork in the boxes, probably, or the artwork in the decks, but or the starter decks. But yeah, I think that's it. Yep. Dan has said that he's out of all these cards, he has changed a lot of the effects already. So most of these cards will see changes. I believe it's Drops, he said, is changing. I think Chrysor is changing. I think he said... Alright, he mentioned 4 cards. Oh, and then he said Gavadim's changing a bit. He mentioned 4 cards that are changing, but overall, really cool cards. Super exciting cards to play with. A couple cards that need to get nerfed hard in that card. And the one at the end there. Tennistalk, like, just nerf them, please. But other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed this. A little bit long video, but it's a lot of cards to go through. So, please, I appreciate if you're still here. Like, subscribe, tell your friends about the card game. Send your friends over to the other content creators as well. Just have a good day. Appreciate all you. Peace.